Every night, your brain builds a parallel world, one that can feel more real, more vivid, more emotionally charged than the life you just left behind. You lose your name, you lose your body, you lose your sense of time, your sense of place, your sense of who you spent all day pretending to be. And for a few hours, something inside you takes over that doesn't answer to logic, or to reason, or to you. We call it dreaming. So familiar that you barely notice it happening. You climb into bed, close your eyes, and slowly lose contact with the world. The room around you disappears. The concerns that occupied your mind all day dissolve into silence. The identity you spend every waking moment protecting and maintaining simply fades away, and in its place, something else takes over. Something with its own logic, its own characters, its own sense of what counts as normal. But what if dreaming isn't just your brain cleaning up the day's clutter? What if it's a signal, sent from a part of your mind you can never directly see, carrying information you didn't even know you had? Dreams have fascinated us since the beginning of recorded thought. Ancient civilizations treated them as messages from the gods. Religious traditions viewed them as portals into deeper truths. Psychologists saw them as windows into the hidden architecture of the mind. Despite centuries of disagreement about what dreams actually are, one intuition has persisted across nearly every culture and era. The feeling that dreams are revealing something we can't normally see. Not inventing something out of nothing. Revealing we can't see the inside of a black hole, and yet we can observe its effects on everything around it. The way light bends near it. The way stars orbit something invisible. We can't directly observe a quantum system without disturbing it, and yet we can learn about it through the traces it leaves behind. Perhaps dreams work the same way. Traces of something hidden beneath the surface of conscious experience, visible only indirectly, only through their effects. And in one of the strangest experiments in modern physics, scientists recently found a way to make a hidden system reveal itself through something they call an echo. Which raises an obvious question. What if dreams are doing exactly the same thing? In 2024, researchers at Google announced a breakthrough involving a quantum computer called Willow. The headline achievement was technical, and honestly a bit dense. You don't need the physics to follow this story, so we'll keep it simple. But buried inside the experiment was an idea that feels strangely, almost eerily relevant to the mystery of dreaming. Here's the easiest way to picture it. Think about how a bat navigates a pitch-black cave. It can't see the walls. So instead, it shouts, a burst of high-frequency sound, and listens carefully to what bounces back. From that returning echo, it builds a shockingly accurate map of a space it never actually saw. It knows where the ceiling drops low, where a tunnel narrows, where the exit waits, all without a single photon of light. We do something similar with sonar. Send sound into the depths of the ocean, and the sound that returns maps a landscape that would otherwise stay completely invisible to us. Canyons, wrecks, entire mountain ranges under the waves. The principle is always the same. When something is too dark, too complex, or too hidden to look at directly, an echo can show you its shape anyway. Google's researchers built something like a sonar system for information itself. They sent a signal through an enormously complex system, more than 100 entangled particles deep. Partway through, they introduced a tiny disturbance, a change almost too small to measure, a single altered particle in a system of over 100. Then they reversed the whole process and let the signal travel back the way it came. When the returning signal met the original, the two interfered with each other, and that interference pattern, that echo, carried hidden information about the system's internal structure. Nothing about the system had to be observed directly, which normally would have destroyed the very thing they were trying to measure. The echo told researchers everything they needed to know, without ever looking straight at it. What makes this so compelling isn't the physics, it's how closely it mirrors an idea that's 100 years old. Carl Jung believed every human being carries a vast unconscious realm that exists far beyond ordinary awareness. To Jung, the conscious mind, the you thinking these thoughts right now, is only a small island, surrounded by an immense ocean of psychological activity. Beneath that island lies a world of forgotten memories, suppressed emotions, instinctive drives, inherited patterns, and possibilities you haven't lived yet. Most of what makes you, according to Jung, is happening somewhere you can't consciously reach. While your conscious mind is busy handling the immediate demands of the day, Jung believed the unconscious never stops working. It observes, it processes, it connects information you're not even aware you've collected. He often spoke about it almost as if it had its own point of view, noticing things before you do, catching contradictions you'd rather ignore, detecting emotional conflicts you've spent years refusing to name, and most importantly, trying to tell you about it through dreams. Dreams, in Jung's framework, are exactly this kind of echo, even though he never used that word. Signals sent upward from the depths of the psyche, not literal messages, symbolic ones. The unconscious doesn't speak English, or Urdu, or any spoken language at all. It speaks in images, in metaphor, in emotion, in story. And once you see it that way, the parallel to Google's experiment becomes almost impossible to unsee. The mind sends a signal into a hidden system every single night, and what comes back, the dream, is the interference pattern created where conscious and unconscious meet. This is part of why dreams feel so strange. If the unconscious communicated in plain sentences, dreams would look like ordinary daytime thoughts. Instead, they arrive wrapped in symbolism, the same way a bat never actually sees the cave, only a sound-shaped representation of it. A dream about a collapsing house probably has nothing to do with architecture. A dream about being chased probably has nothing to do with an actual predator. The image itself usually matters less than the feeling underneath it. The building is just the vessel. The fear of collapse is the message. Jung noticed something else too. Many of his patients had dreams that seemed to understand them better than they understood themselves. People dreamed about problems they hadn't consciously recognized yet. They encountered symbolic warnings months before an actual crisis hit. A dream would surface a hidden fear, an unresolved conflict, a wound the person had buried for years, not creating the problem, just exposing something that was already there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right symbol to make it visible. And that's exactly what makes dreaming so hard to dismiss as meaningless. Even if every dream originates entirely inside the brain with zero outside influence, the question remains: why does the brain bother? Why spend so much energy constructing elaborate symbolic worlds every single night, for a total of years across a human lifetime, if none of it serves a purpose? Evolution is not famous for wasting energy on nothing. A process this costly, running every single night of every human life across the entire span of our species, usually earns its keep somehow. So maybe dreaming really is part of a navigation system. The mind using something like echolocation to move through regions of itself it can never observe directly. The unconscious sends a signal upward. Consciousness receives it. And what forms in between is a rough map of hidden territory. If that's true, then every single night, you're participating in something far stranger than just resting. We assume sleep is an absence, a temporary shutdown before waking life resumes. But what if it isn't absence at all? What if it's a journey inward, one you take every night without remembering you left? There's a strange parallel worth pausing on here. While your unconscious mind spends the night quietly collecting, sorting, and processing everything it knows about you, there's a different kind of collecting happening while you're wide awake. And it's a lot less well-intentioned. Right now, companies you've never heard of are compiling detailed files on you. Your name, your location, your employer, your email address, your browsing habits. At best, that profile gets sold to advertisers. At worst, it ends up in the hands of someone trying to scam you, impersonate you, or exploit you directly. Unlike your subconscious, these companies aren't doing this to help you. They're doing it to profit off you quietly in the background. Without your knowledge, the same way your own mind works while you sleep, except with none of the good intentions. That's what Incogni, the sponsor of today's video, exists to stop. Incogni finds where your personal data is being stored, data brokers, people search sites, shady directories, and files removal requests on your behalf. Legally, these companies have to comply if you ask them to delete your data, but doing it yourself can take weeks, months, sometimes years, one request at a time, across dozens of sites you've probably never heard of. Incogni automates the entire process and keeps working in the background long after you've forgotten it's running. They've also just launched a new feature called custom removals. If you personally find a site exposing your information, you can send Incogni the link directly, and their team will work to get it taken down, even outside their usual network. If you want to take back control of your personal data, go to incogni.com Aperture Deal and use code ApertureDeal for 60% off an annual plan now. Back into the dark. Most dreams disappear almost the moment you wake up. Within minutes, the details start dissolving. By lunchtime, all that's left is a fragment, a face with no name attached, a place that never existed, a feeling that lingers long after the images themselves are gone. By evening, most people couldn't tell you they dreamed at all, but every so often, a dream behaves completely differently. Instead of fading, it embeds itself into memory with unusual force. Years later, it's still vivid. The colors, the atmosphere, specific details that would normally have vanished by breakfast. People often describe these dreams as having changed them, as marking a before and an after in how they saw their own life. Jung became fascinated by these experiences and gave them a name: big dreams. Unlike ordinary dreams, big dreams seem to arrive from somewhere deeper. They carry an unusual emotional weight. The dreamer wakes up with the unmistakable sense that something important just happened, even before they can explain what. Jung noticed these tended to show up during major life transitions, right before a psychological crisis, right before a profound personal transformation, right before someone stood at a crossroads without fully realizing it yet. What makes them powerful usually isn't the content itself. Sometimes the imagery is almost embarrassingly simple. A stranger appears, a bridge collapses, a door opens into an unfamiliar room. Nothing dramatic on the surface. And yet the dream feels charged with more meaning than the images can account for, as if it's carrying information from somewhere much deeper than usual, compressed into a single frame. This is where the perturbation detail from Google's experiment becomes relevant again. Before reversing their signal, the researchers introduced a disturbance, a single microscopic change to one particle. That tiny modification spread through the entire system, and by tracking how it interacted with the returning signal, researchers uncovered hidden structure they never could have found by looking directly. A small cause, a disproportionately large result. The butterfly effect, essentially, playing out inside a machine. Dreams seem to work the same way. A single image can alter the course of someone's entire life, the same way a butterfly's wings in one rainforest can, through an invisible chain of consequences, shift weather patterns on the other side of the planet. The image looks trivial, but it functions like a psychological disturbance, a piece of new information dropped into your system, spreading outward. The dreamer reflects on it, questions surface, assumptions get challenged. Feelings that had been ignored for years suddenly demand attention. What started as one small forgettable image slowly reorganizes an entire way of seeing reality, one quiet realization at a time. Modern neuroscience offers a genuinely strange parallel here. At any given moment, your brain is processing far more information than you're consciously aware of. Most of that activity never reaches your direct experience. Countless signals get filtered out before they hit conscious thought. But they don't disappear. They keep influencing your behavior from underneath, shaping your mood, your instincts, your gut reactions to people and situations you can't fully explain. Experiments have repeatedly shown that the brain starts moving toward a decision before the conscious mind becomes aware of having made one. The feeling of choosing often arrives after the process has already started. Consciousness, in other words, may be less like the author of your thoughts and more like a translator, sprinting to catch up with a story that's already in motion, narrating events after they've already been decided somewhere else. which opens up an intriguing possibility. Maybe dreams are one of the mechanisms your brain uses to push already finished conclusions up into awareness. Not new information, reorganized information, finally arriving in a form you can actually understand. Someone dreams about a crumbling building and suddenly recognizes the instability in their relationship. Someone else dreams about missing a train and realizes, with a jolt, that they're terrified of wasting their life. The insight feels surprising and strangely familiar at the exact same time, because the dream isn't creating the knowledge. It's just carrying it back to the surface, packaged in a way the conscious mind can finally accept. This idea gets even more interesting once you factor in reports of dreams that seem to predict future events. Human history is full of these stories. Kings consulted dream interpreters before making political decisions. Generals delayed military campaigns because of an ominous vision during sleep. Entire religious traditions were built around the idea that dreams could reveal what was coming, and entire professions existed just to interpret them correctly. Modern people tend to write this off as superstition, and yet the phenomenon has never fully disappeared. People today still report dreams that feel uncannily predictive. A conversation before it happens, an accident, an illness, an unexpected encounter that later shows up in real life. Most of this is explainable through coincidence, or selective memory, or our very human tendency to reinterpret events after the fact to make them fit a good story. We're pattern-seeking creatures, and we're extremely good at connecting dots that were never actually related in the first place. But there's another explanation available, not mystical, but arguably more interesting. Imagine the unconscious is constantly running its own analysis of your life, well ahead of conscious awareness. It notices subtle tension in a relationship long before you're willing to call it toxic. It picks up on early signs of illness before symptoms are obvious. It recognizes behavioral patterns pointing toward a specific outcome, long before you'd admit it out loud, even to yourself. If a dream emerges from that deeper layer of analysis, it can feel prophetic without requiring anything supernatural at all. A skilled chess player can often sense where a game is heading several moves ahead, without consciously working it out. Years of pattern recognition doing the job automatically, faster than deliberate thought could ever manage. Maybe the unconscious operates the same way, modeling reality, generating predictions from information that never technically reaches conscious awareness. If that's true, a dream isn't showing you the future. It's showing you a future, one likely branch among many, an echo of where your current path is heading, not a fixed destination. Jung found this idea genuinely compelling because it turns dreams from passive experiences into active guides. The dream stops being a replay of the past and becomes a tool for reading the present and previewing what's ahead. And that may explain why certain dreams feel less like memories and more like messages, because sometimes the signal coming up is simply too strong to ignore. If dreams are echoes, the obvious next question is, what's producing the echo in the first place? And this is where things get genuinely strange, because we run straight into a mystery that's troubled philosophers, mystics, and psychologists for centuries, hiding inside the simplest question imaginable. What actually happens to consciousness when you fall asleep? At first, the answer feels obvious. The brain shifts through stages of activity, dreams come and go, and eventually you wake up. But look closer and it gets strange fast. You lie down, close your eyes, and slowly lose awareness of the world around you. The room disappears, sounds fade out, thoughts fragment, and then, at some point, consciousness itself seems to simply vanish. Hours pass, and from your own perspective, no time passed at all. Not a slow fade, a gap. We spend nearly a third of our lives asleep and almost never stop to consider what that actually means. Waking experience has continuity. One moment leads into the next. There's a felt sense of duration, of movement, of persistence, even when you're bored out of your mind, staring at a clock waiting for a meeting to end. Dreamless sleep has none of that.
One,
No through line,
two,
no story, no
three,
memory, no felt
action.
sense of time passing. You're falling asleep.
Okay.
Then you're waking up, in between. An apparent void, one you can never actually inspect from the inside. Schopenhauer once compared sleep to a temporary return to the state that existed before you were born. Other thinkers have called it a kind of nightly death, an interruption in the stream of experience so complete, it raises real questions about personal identity. Because if consciousness genuinely disappears every night, what exactly is it that returns in the morning? Is it really you, or just something that remembers being you? The obvious answer is, you return. But look closely and that certainty starts to wobble. The self feels continuous mostly because memory creates the illusion of continuity. You remember who you are, you remember yesterday, you remember falling asleep, and those memories stitch together the impression of an unbroken existence. But the actual experience of dreamless sleep stays completely inaccessible. Consciousness appears to vanish entirely, and something reassembles itself the next morning, right on schedule, wearing your memories like a coat it put back on. In ancient Greece, sleep and death were portrayed as twin brothers. Across many cultures, sleep was treated as a genuine journey into the unknown, a brief departure from ordinary reality that you're expected to survive and return from. Even now, there's something quietly unsettling about surrendering consciousness on purpose. Every night, without question, trusting that whatever comes back in the morning will still feel like you. The philosopher Thomas Nagel once asked what it's like to be a bat, arguing that subjective experience has a quality that can't be explained from the outside. You only know what it's like to be you because you're the one living it. So what does it feel like to be unconscious? The question can't really be answered, because there's no one there to answer it. Dreaming at least gives you content, a world, however strange, that's actually being perceived. Dreamless sleep gives you nothing, and yet somehow awareness comes back online every single time. Why? Most scientific explanations point to brain activity, certain networks deactivating, others staying active, various regions coordinating the wake-sleep transition. Useful, but it leaves the deeper question untouched. Why does subjective experience show up here at all? Why is there something it's like to be you? And where does that something go while you're gone? Late in his life, Jung recorded one of the strangest dreams of his career, one that seemed to shake his own understanding of identity. In the dream, he found himself standing inside a temple. Seated there deep in meditation was a yogi, ancient, serene, completely absorbed. As Jung watched, he slowly noticed something troubling. The yogi had his face. At first, he assumed he was looking at another version of himself. Then a much more disturbing possibility surfaced. What if it was the other way around? What if the yogi wasn't being dreamed by Jung? What if Jung was being dreamed by the yogi? The insight hit him hard. The meditating figure seemed to exist at a deeper level of reality than the ordinary, everyday Jung, who suddenly felt almost secondary, almost fictional by comparison. He sensed that, if the yogi ever woke up, Jung himself would cease to exist. That dream stayed with him for years, because underneath the strange imagery sits a genuinely unsettling question. What if your conscious self isn't the deepest layer of who you are? What if the person you think you are only exists on the surface, a temporary character in a story someone, or something, else is telling? Modern psychology often describes consciousness as a small fraction of total mental activity. Most cognition happens outside awareness. Decisions begin before you're aware of making them. Emotions arise from systems you don't control directly. Jung's dream just takes that idea to its logical extreme. Imagine your waking identity is only the visible tip of a much larger, mostly hidden process. In that case, falling asleep wouldn't mean consciousness disappears. It would mean it retreats from one level of reality to another. The dreamer becomes the dreamed, the observer becomes the observed, and the self discovers it was never the whole picture to begin with. This exact intuition shows up again and again across human history, in cultures with no contact with one another. Mystics describe waking up from the illusion of individuality. Eastern philosophies treat the ego as a temporary construction, not an ultimate reality. Certain religious traditions describe ordinary waking consciousness itself as a kind of dream you eventually wake up from. None of this proves anything, but the fact that so many unrelated traditions land on the same intuition independently is, at the very least, striking and hard to explain away as pure coincidence. Anyone who's had a vivid dream knows how convincing they can feel while they're happening. The dream world runs on its own logic, its own internal physics, its own version of normal. You talk to people who died years ago, or who never existed at all. You visit places that don't exist anywhere. None of it feels strange in the moment. It's only afterward, once you're awake, that you realize how odd the whole thing was. Which raises an uncomfortable question. How do you know you're awake right now? The obvious answer is that reality feels stable. Physics behaves consistently. Memory connects one moment to the next. But dreams feel exactly this coherent while you're inside them. Psychologists call one of the stranger versions of this a false awakening. You dream that you've woken up, and everything checks out. Your bedroom looks correct. Your morning routine starts normally. Reality seems fully intact. Then something impossible happens, and you realize you're still asleep. Sometimes this repeats several times in a row, each layer feeling just as convincing as the last, until the dreamer isn't sure anymore which waking was the real one. René Descartes ran into exactly this wall in the 17th century, wondering whether any experience could prove with certainty that he was awake. Every test he tried hit the same wall. Dreams can imitate almost everything: sight, sound, touch, memory, narrative continuity. So what's actually left to tell the two states apart? Most of us fall back on practical certainty. Reality behaves consistently over long stretches of time, but subjectively, both states feel completely real while they last, and neither one announces itself as fake. This is where the echo idea earns its keep one more time. Modern neuroscience increasingly frames the brain as a prediction engine, not passively observing reality, but constantly building and updating an internal model of the world. In a sense, the brain is always simulating something. During sleep, incoming sensory input drops off sharply, and the brain is free to build entire worlds from scratch. Environments, characters, conflicts, whole scenarios it can run and test without real-world consequences. Many researchers think this serves a real purpose: rehearsing threats, exploring social situations somewhere safe, consolidating memories, processing emotion, preparing for what's coming. Less like watching a movie, more like running the training level of a video game. The sleeping mind generating possibilities and checking the consequences. What happens if this relationship ends? What happens if I miss this goal? What happens if my biggest fear turns out to be true? Some people report dreams that feel far longer than their actual duration. Entire alternate lives, complete with relationships, histories, memories of their own. People have genuinely mourned dream families that never existed, grieving people who never once drew breath. For a while, both realities feel equally solid. Which says something important. Reality isn't just something you observe. It's something your brain constructs. Dreams demonstrate exactly how far that constructive process can go when it isn't being constrained by the outside world. And that raises a genuinely provocative possibility. What if waking consciousness is just one layer in a longer stack? Every dream feels completely real until a higher level of awareness shows up and reveals it as a construction nested inside something bigger. Plato imagined ordinary reality as shadows on a cave wall. Hindu philosophy describes the physical world as Maya, a veil of appearances. Mystics across centuries and continents describe waking up from ordinary consciousness into something more fundamental. These traditions disagree on almost everything else, but they keep converging on the same basic intuition, that the reality you take for granted might not be the deepest one available. There's one last piece of the quantum echo experiment worth mentioning. The actual output physicists get from it is something called an out-of-time ordered correlator, an intimidating name for a fairly simple idea. It measures how information spreads through a system across both space and time, exposing connections between distant moments that would otherwise stay completely hidden. It's not just showing researchers what a system looks like. It's showing them how moments separated in time are secretly linked, connected in ways a normal snapshot could never reveal. That's a technical tool for a physicist. For anyone interested in dreams, it's an almost irresistible metaphor, because one of the strangest features of dreaming is exactly its relationship with time. Dreams obey completely different temporal rules than waking life. Hours can pass in seconds. Entire narratives unfold in what feels like moments. Past experiences merge freely with imagined futures. Events separated by decades sit side by side as if they're happening at once. The ordinary flow of time turns fluid, almost irrelevant, almost optional. Many people describe dreams that feel like they exist entirely outside chronology. Childhood memories blending seamlessly with present-day concerns. Future anxieties showing up as symbolic landscapes. Long-dead relatives calmly discussing events that haven't happened yet, as though the timeline never mattered to begin with. The dreaming mind moves through time the way you'd move through rooms in a house, in no particular order. That's likely why dreams have always felt prophetic to people. Not because every claim is literally true, but because the experience itself feels completely convincing while it's happening, like consciousness has briefly slipped outside the normal flow of time altogether. Jung became fascinated by this. While staying cautious about supernatural explanations, he acknowledged that human experience sometimes produces coincidences meaningful enough to be genuinely hard to dismiss. He called these synchronicities, not necessarily mystical causation, but a kind of alignment between an inner experience and an outer event, one that feels deeply significant even without a clear causal link. Dreams sit right at the center of these stories. Someone dreams of an old friend and runs into them the next day. Someone dreams of a major life transition shortly before it actually arrives. A symbolic image keeps recurring until an event finally gives it meaning. Whether this is unconscious prediction or something stranger, the feeling is always the same. That consciousness might be able to sense patterns extending beyond the present moment. Patterns that only become obvious in hindsight. Maybe that's because the unconscious experiences time differently. Your conscious mind lives almost entirely in the present. Immediate task, immediate threat, immediate goal. The unconscious appears to operate on a much wider scale, integrating years of memory, emotional association, and behavioral pattern into an ongoing model of what's likely to happen next. An experienced sailor can often predict a storm hours before it arrives, not through any supernatural sense, but through sensitivity to subtle patterns invisible to less experienced eyes. A change in the wind, a shift in the color of the sky. Dreams might function the same way. What feels like prophecy might just be very good pattern recognition, operating quietly beneath conscious awareness, translated into a language you can finally understand. Even so, some mystery remains. Why does the unconscious insist on communicating through stories instead of just handing you the conclusion directly? Probably because facts rarely change minds. Experience does. Someone can understand a problem intellectually for years without ever acting on it. A single powerful dream can deliver the same truth in one night because it doesn't just tell you something. It lets you live through it. And living through something changes you in a way that simply knowing it never quite manages to. Which brings us back to where we started. Picture the bat again, flying through a cave it can't see. It can't observe the walls directly, can't map the tunnels by sight, can't see any of the obstacles ahead of it, so it sends a signal outward and listens carefully to what comes back. The echo builds a map, the invisible becomes visible, the unknown becomes navigable. Maybe dreams do exactly the same thing. The human psyche is too vast to fully comprehend from the inside. Beneath conscious awareness sits an entire landscape of memory, instinct, fear, desire, and possibility that we simply can't walk through directly, the way you'd walk through a familiar city. It stays hidden in the dark. So the mind sends a signal into itself, and what comes back is the dream. An echo shaped by the meeting point of conscious and unconscious. It exposes emotional truths. It sketches out possible futures. It guides growth. Sometimes it warns you. Sometimes it comforts you. Sometimes it forces you to face something you'd rather avoid. but it's always saying some version of the same thing. You are larger than you appear to be. The conscious self feels like the center of your identity, and yet it may only be the surface of something much deeper, a process that becomes visible for a few hours every single night. Images rise out of the dark. Fragments of stories surface from regions of the mind you never visit during the day. Then morning arrives. The dream dissolves. Emails need answering, conversations need to happen, and ordinary life resumes its familiar rhythm, as if nothing happened at all. But somewhere underneath that routine, the deeper process never actually stopped. It keeps observing, it keeps connecting, it keeps generating echoes. And tonight, when you close your eyes again, it starts over. Your conscious world fading, the dark returning, and somewhere past the edge of ordinary awareness, another signal beginning its long trip back to the surface. The only real question is whether you'll be listening when it arrives.